Okay, my little chickpeas. So we've been learning a lot about prime factorization, greatest common factor, least common multiple. And what I want to show you really quick today is how least common multiple can help us with adding and subtracting fractions. And so go ahead and start your notes. And this is going to be a fairly quick session today, so make sure that you're on top of it. If you need to pause the video so that you can catch up, then go ahead and do that. Once you've gotten this copy down, I want you to take a look at this problem that I have here, okay? First of all, let me say something about fractions and writing fractions. Okay. In the past, some of you have learned to write fractions like this. Okay? Or, you know, maybe with a little bit more of a diagonal or something like that, okay? We don't do that. Fractions are always straight, okay? So the only way to write that fraction is like this, okay? If you write fractions like this and you're in my class, I'm going to count it wrong. Because you don't write a fraction like that. You write a fraction like this, okay? And it's really important because as we get into really more difficult problems, moving into 7th and 8th and 9th grade, if you don't write your fractions correctly, you're going to really mess up your problems, okay? So I want you to take a look at the problem that I have here, and I've already solved it. But I'd like you to notice that both of the fractions that I added had different denominators. Okay? How did I get my new denominator for my answer? How did I get that? Think about it for a second. How did Mrs. Rodriguez get 24 as a denominator? Okay, so some of you might have learned in 4th and 5th grade that the easiest way to get a denominator is to find the easiest common denominator. And the easiest common denominator is to multiply the two different denominators together. So if I multiplied 6 and 8, okay? But the problem with doing that is that you're going to get very big numbers in your fractions, and you're almost always going to have to simplify your fractions a lot, okay? Whereas if you learn to use something called the least common denominator, you will have to do a lot less simplifying, okay? So let's take a look at this. What I did was I found my least common denominator. And finding my least common denominator is the same thing as finding my least common multiple of the denominators, okay? So if I do my ladder method, actually, you know what? I'm just going to list multiples for this one. And I do 6. I go 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. I'm going to stop there. And then for 8, I do 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. Okay, you can see right here I found my common denominator. My least common denominator. It's 24. So instead of using a big number, 48, I can use 24, and I'll have to simplify a lot less, okay? So since I'm going to use 24 as my new common denominator, I have to look at my problem and I have to say, okay, well, how do I get 5/8 to be a denominator of 24? So if I have 5/8 plus 1/6, and I want to get my denominator to be 24, how would I get from an 8 to a 24? I would multiply the 8 times 3, wouldn't I? So it's 3 times 8. And if I do it on the bottom, I have to do it on the top. So the top is going to be 3 times 5. And then on the right side of my problem, I have 1/6. How do I get from 6 to 24? I multiply by 4. And if I do it on the bottom, then I have to do it on the top. So 1 times 4. Okay, now I do the math. 3 times 5 is 15, and 3 times 8 we know is 24. Plus 1 times 4 is 4, plus over 6 times 4 is 24. And then, since we worked so hard to get a common denominator, we wouldn't want to go messing with that denominator now, right? So when we add fractions, we need to remember, keep the denominator and add the numerator. Keep the denominator, add the numerator. And look what I did, because I was talking when I was trying to write. So I get 19/24. And because I did not use a different denominator like 48, I don't have to simplify because there is no number that goes into both 19 and 24. So I have a simplified fraction already. Isn't that awesome? Okay, let's try another one. And this time, let's do, I'm sorry, subtraction. So let's take a look at doing a subtraction problem. We'll go with 4/5 minus 5/12. Okay. So once again, I need to try and find the least common denominator. Now I could look at this and say, well, the easy thing to do is 5 times 12 is 60. And I could make a really big fraction, but I don't want to have to make a really big fraction if I don't have to. So first, let me see if there's a smaller common denominator. So first, I can list my multiples. 5, it's going to be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Okay, let's do 12. 12 is going to be 12, 24, 48, 36, 48, 60. Oh, well, gosh, now I've already passed this one. So guess what? 60 is my least common denominator. So I'm going to change my fraction so that I have a 60 on the bottom, okay? So sometimes your easiest common denominator is the lowest common denominator, okay? So how do I get from 5 to a 60? I multiply by 12. And how do I get, I'm sorry, and if I do it on the bottom, I do it on the top, so make sure I write that. How do I get from 12 to 60? I multiply times 5, and if I do it on the bottom, I do it on the top, and now I do the math. Okay, 12 times 4 is 48. 5 times 12 is 60. Minus 5 times 5 is 25, and 12 times 5 is 60. Okay, now all I have to do is subtract my numerator and keep my denominator. Denominator stays the same. Subtracting straight across, I get an answer of 23/60. And again, there's no number that goes into both 23 or 60, so I am already simplified. So that is my answer. Okay. Let's try one more. And this time we will, oh, I can't find my samples. I'm sorry. Okay, one more time we're going to try 2/3 plus 5/12. All right, now work with your smaller number first. 3, 6, 9, 12. Oh, look, I just found a common multiple. So there's my common denominator. Okay, now this time, look, my common is 12, right? That's common. So, but look, this time on this fraction, I already have the common denominator. So I don't have to do anything to that side of the fraction. What I do have to do is make this one a 12. So to get from a 3 to a 12, I have to multiply times 4. And then if I do it on the bottom, I do it on the top. But remember, I don't have to change this one at all, okay? So now I do the math on this side. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 5/12. And then remember, keep your denominator and add your numerator. And hopefully you see a little bitty problem with that answer. That problem is an improper fraction. And sometimes I want you to give me your answer as an improper fraction. A lot of times I do, because that's how we do it on the EOG sometimes, right? So I do take improper fractions, but I also want you to realize that you have to divide that smaller number into the bigger number. So when the denominator is smaller than the numerator, you have to divide it into it. So 12 divided into 13 is going to give you 1, and what's left over? 1/12. So this is your answer, and this is your answer. Okay? Sometimes your directions will say to simplify it, and if it's a simplify, you go all the way down to this. And then other times it might say leave as a mixed number or an improper fraction. That's fine, okay? Alrighty guys, you're gonna take what we talked about today and you are going to go and work on your practice activity.